Hey there folks, John here with Through My Lens, and today I'm coming to you with another knife-related video. Today we're going to be taking a look at this Koenig Arius and comparing it to the Shirogorov F3 NS. Now this is a really tough comparison to do, and it's not just because they're both great knives from great makers, but also because they're really not ideal models from each maker to be comparing. Now technically speaking, the Hottie R from Shirogorov, being a production level titanium frame lock with a carbon fiber scale or similar material on the presentation side, would be most comparable to the Arius here. This F3 NS is a liner lock with carbon fiber scales on both sides. But the Shirogorov F3, F95/Hottie are all very similar knives, and as such, I didn't think the outcome was significantly impacted by the subtle model differences that we're seeing here. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get right into determining which of these two is the better knife. So starting with design, I would say that there are really so many design differences between these two knives, it's difficult to know where to begin. Both designs are somewhat polarizing. The Shirogorov F3 is criticized for being a little too conservative and steak knife-like, and the Arius for perhaps being a little bit too radical or futuristic looking. It's just not to everybody's cup of tea. Ergonomically, I think while both knives feel fantastic, I think the Arius really gets points for having a spot here on the blade spine where your thumb locks into, against the blade. That gives you a really good purchase there. Comparing that to the F3, which, feels like my thumb is really floating as the jimping offers no traction at all, really. Additionally, I think the Arius here also gets points for being an order of magnitude easier to disassemble for cleaning and lubrication. You really only need to remove these three Torx T8 screws on the back of the knife, to get it disassembled. The F3, by comparison, does have one less screw that you need to remove, but the hardware is proprietary, and it really can be difficult to remove without purchasing expensive tools from Shirogorov. Additionally, the F3 employs Shirogorov's multi-row bearing system, or MRBS. It's a differentiator from other brands like Koenig, which offer dual-row bearings in a captured ring. But the MRBS system employs only stainless steel bearings, which are not captured like the traditional dual-row captured bearings in the Arius. It's hard to say, how much of a benefit those ceramic bearings would give the Arius versus the F3 NS. It may be a paper benefit, it's hard to say. The benefit that I see to the Arius system is that you don't have to worry about those captured bearings going all over the place when you disassemble the knife versus the F3 NS, which that is very much a concern when you're trying to clean and maintain the knife. I would say that from what I've read, Shirogorov seems to believe that ceramic bearings in the pivot would damage the pivot, despite the fact that many other manufacturers like Koenig use ceramic bearings without issue. Now, I also appreciate the non-rotating pivot in the Arius versus the F3, which does have a rotating pivot screw and can make disassembly a bit of a challenge. Now, while both knives have great pocket clips, I think the F3 pocket clip is just next level good. It really is just fantastic, both from a aesthetic design standpoint and from an execution. Just really, again, considered one of the best pocket clips in the industry. The Arius, by comparison, also has a milled pocket clip, and it is certainly not a bad pocket clip. I do like it. I don't really have an issue with it functionally. It's just that the pocket clip on the F3 NS is just, again, a step above, as you compare them. Now, if you take a look at fit and finish between these two knives, Shirogorov is an older company than Koenig, and a larger one. The company does have a reputation for their knives being perfect out of the box every single time, and this F3 NS was no exception to that. I've been really impressed with the fit and finish. Bill Koenig is a young guy. He's in his 20s. The company essentially only produces 2 different models at present, the Arius and the Mini Goblin. Now this focus has allowed the Arius to mature at an accelerated rate, and the Arius is currently at generation 4, which this knife is an example of, having been manufactured in the fall of 2020. Now both knives are really using nearly identical materials: milled carbon fiber, milled titanium, Bowler M390 blade steel. Both knives really are a shining example of manufacturing excellence for their respective companies. These are clearly 2 of the best production knives in the world. You really can't take anything away from either one from a fit and finish standpoint. They're just fantastic. Both knives display numerous finishing details which really are exceptional. We're talking about beveling and contouring and an infinite attention to detail. The blade finish on the Koenig, this is their bright wash. It's found on their production knives. It's very similar to the stonewash finish that you'll find on a plain Jane Sebenza, for example. But the upper portion of the blade has a satin finish applied that is pretty consistent with every Koenig Arius that I've ever come across. By comparison, the F3 NS has a very light but extremely consistent stonewash finish throughout the blade. It is breathtakingly beautiful. I absolutely love that finish. But I will say, if you actually like to use your knife for cutting, that the finish on the Koenig Arius will resist showing wear a little better than the light but beautifully consistent stonewash on the F3. Again, I think both are absolutely gorgeous blade finishes. Very impressive. So let's take a minute to talk about the action on both of these knives, the deployment action, because both knives are world famous for their respective deployment actions. Both of these knives have been disassembled, cleaned, and lubricated with knife pivot lube. I'm trying to keep things as comparable and as fair as possible. The pivot screw on the F3 has been adjusted to optimize the action without compromising blade centering. Again, if you take a look, you will see that the blade is perfectly centered. The action is fantastic. It's almost drop shut. There's just a little bit of resistance. Maybe that's a byproduct of the multiple points of contact on that multi-row bearing system. I don't know. I will say that the design of the Arius pivot really requires no adjustment. You just tighten it down, and it's fantastic. That's really different than so many knives out there on the market. Hinderers are the same way. Many knives do require a little bit of adjustment to the pivot to get the deployment action optimized. Now the Koenig here fires hard and fast. It is absolutely drop shut with little to no provocation. Just fantastic, really. I will say that the detent, I've talked about this a little bit in the past as I've reviewed this knife previously here on Through My Lens, that the detent on the Koenig Arius is a little heavy. It's a little stiff for my taste, but you certainly love the byproduct of that, which is how hard and fast the knife blade kicks out every single time. Now, the detent on the F3 by comparison really is perfect to my taste. It breaks noticeably easier than the Arius. Now, consequently to that, the F3 doesn't fire quite as hard as the Arius, but it is very smooth. And the F3, again, doesn't close quite as smoothly as the Arius. So, it really comes down to personal taste as to which one of the deployment actions on these two knives someone would prefer. I really find myself as a loss as to which one that I prefer. So instead, I will say that both of these knives have actions which are the best I've come across in a production knife. Now, taking a look at their factory locations, their respective factory locations and the support they provide, obviously since I'm US-based, Koenig being a US-based company, I'm biased toward Koenig. Koenig does offer a fantastic spa service, and so does Shirogorov, but the difference is that you pay for it with Shiro. Here in the US, the procedure with Shirogorov would be to send it to Recon 1, who is the main US authorized source for Shirogorov in the United States. They would in turn send the knife to Russia. Now once received by Shirogorov, they would provide Recon 1 an estimate, who would in turn contact the customer to let them know the cost. At this point, the customer has the option to go forward or to have the knife sent back to them. Now Koenig, on the other hand, provides their reconditioning or spa services for free. Unless, of course, there's actual damage to the knife that's not covered under warranty that needs to be repaired. Now, so given that the spa services are ostensibly free with Koenig, I really do have to give them extra points in this regard for that. So let's talk a minute about price, because it's certainly hard to compare and talk about these two knives and not compare their respective prices. I did pick up this Arius from one of Koenig's dealers in their dealer network for $750. Which so I didn't have to pay over retail or table price there. You can compare that to the price that I paid from Recon 1, which again is the main authorized source for Shirogorovs in the United States. That one came in at $900 for the F3 NS. So again, for some collectors, comparing the Arius to the F3 is an either-or question. They will get one or the other, but not both. And on that basis, it's really very hard to recommend the F3 over the Arius. However, others will look at the $900 price tag of the F3 NS and weigh that against the mid-$2,000 price tag of the custom division F3 and conclude that the F3 NS really is quite a bargain on that basis. Now, it's unlikely that anyone would have to choose between these two knives, as they're both extremely rare. But if by some stroke of luck, extraordinary good luck, you did have the opportunity to pick between these two, it might well just come down to geography, where you're located versus the relative factory, and your personal preference. With me being in the US and my tastes being what they are, I'd certainly choose the Koenig Arius. And yet the F3 NS has proven to be a remarkable knife that is extremely unique and unmistakably desirable. These two clearly are the pinnacle of production flippers, and I'm truly blessed to have them both in my collection. Again, Bill Koenig is a young guy, and the company is young as well, and I look forward to following them for years to come, but at present, with only two current product offerings, I really find myself at something of an impasse with them. The Koenig Mini Goblin isn't a knife that appeals to me, quite honestly. And as good as the Arius is, there are only so many variations of the same knife a person can want. Now, Shirogorov, being an older company with a more diverse product line, really has captured my attention recently, and I really do look forward to exploring some of the variations within their models that they do produce and sell over the next months and years. So there you have it. There's kind of my comparison between the Koenig Arius and the Shirogorov F3 NS. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Take care, God bless. We'll see you in the next video.
I hope you've enjoyed this production from the Through My Lens YouTube channel. If you did, please click on the like button and do share the video on social media. If you'd like to see more content like it, please do subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and do check out Through My Lens at www.throughmylens.org.